The wind howled through the narrow streets that night, carrying with it the smell of rain-soaked earth and the heavy silence of despair. In a dimly lit alleyway, an old man sat on a wooden crate, his worn coat barely shielding him from the cold. His face was a map of wrinkles, his hands trembling not just from age but from the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Yet, it was in that very moment, in the quiet darkness of an almost forgotten corner of the city, that his small act of kindness would set into motion something extraordinary, something that would save a family teetering on the edge of collapse. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change lives, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel Kindness. Together, we can spread stories that remind the world there is still goodness left in humanity. The family at the center of this story lived in a cramped one-room apartment just a few streets away from where the old man spent his nights. The father, David Miller, had once been a strong and hopeful man, working day and night to provide for his wife and 2 children. But after losing his job in a textile warehouse due to sudden downsizing, life began to spiral. Bills piled up, creditors came knocking, and meals became smaller and less frequent. His wife, Emily, tried to keep the home together, hiding her tears as she watered down soup to make it last for the children. The children, Sarah and little Jacob, were too young to understand fully, but they felt the heaviness in the air. They felt the sharp pang of hunger in their bellies and the silence of nights when their parents whispered in hushed tones about money they didn't have. For weeks, David searched tirelessly for work, walking the streets with an old folder of certificates that had once meant something but now seemed useless scraps of paper. Everywhere he went, the answer was the same: sorry, no vacancies, or worse, the empty promises of, we'll call you if something comes up. Each rejection chipped away at his pride until even looking into the hopeful eyes of his children became unbearable. The walls of their tiny room felt like a prison closing in, and hopelessness gnawed at him more viciously than hunger ever could. On one particularly cold evening, when the cupboards were bare and the last bit of bread had already been eaten the night before, David walked out, unable to face his family's desperation any longer. He had only a few coins in his pocket, barely enough for a single meal, and as he wandered aimlessly through the streets, he noticed the old man sitting on that crate. The man looked fragile, almost ghost-like, his thin frame draped in rags. Yet, there was something in his eyes, something David had not seen in himself for months. It was a quiet strength, a flicker of resilience. David's steps slowed, and though hunger pressed against his stomach, he could not help but notice that the old man's hands trembled as he tried to light a small lantern beside him. Something inside compelled David to offer the matchbox he carried. It was a small, almost meaningless gesture, but the old man smiled, a deep, genuine smile that warmed the air more than the lantern ever could. He thanked David softly and, to his surprise, reached into a worn cloth bag and pulled out a bundle wrapped in paper. Inside was a piece of fresh bread and a small bottle of milk. "You look like you need this more than I do," the old man whispered. David froze, ashamed to admit how desperately his family needed it, but his body betrayed him. His hands shook as he accepted the food. "It's for your children," the man added knowingly, as though he could see straight through David's silence. That night, when David returned home, he placed the bread and milk on the table. Emily's eyes widened, the children squealed with joy, and for the first time in weeks, they ate together without rationing crumbs. They laughed, they talked, and a flicker of life returned to their tiny home. Emily asked where the food had come from, but David simply said, "A kind stranger." Deep inside, he felt something shift, a tiny spark of hope that perhaps kindness still existed in this cruel world. The following days, David couldn't stop thinking about the old man. He visited him again, this time bringing nothing but his company. They sat together in silence at first, but slowly the old man began to share fragments of his life. His name was Henry Carter. He had once been a teacher, respected and loved, until life's storms had swept away everything he had, his family, his home, his savings. Now, he survived on odd jobs and the kindness of strangers, though strangers were rarely kind. Rest of the story continues exactly as in the original draft, but with the new American names, David, Emily, Sarah, Jacob, and Henry. Backhand index pointing right. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of even the smallest act of kindness, please like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to Kindness. Together, let's keep spreading these messages of hope and compassion to every corner of the world. Before we end, we have one special request. Please comment below with the words, "Kindness lives on," if you believe that even the smallest good deed can create ripples of change. Because sometimes, as this story reminds us, it doesn't take a fortune, a grand gesture, or a hero to save a family. Sometimes, it just takes an old man, a piece of bread, and a heart willing to give.